So here we're going to talk about the interview when you're really, ramping up the interview prep. This is maybe it'll be a week or two out if you've had that much time, or maybe not. Maybe it's just a few days out if need be. But these are just kind of some things that you need to have done before you go into your interview. So first and foremost, it's something that nobody really thinks about, but I was told to prepare. Um, Prepare a list of stories, just some anecdotes that can help you to answer your questions. Because a lot of these questions, they'll say, tell me about a time when, for example, tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with your boss and how did you come to a resolution there, or tell me about a time that you failed. And if this is the first time you're hearing this, it'll be difficult to give a good answer. I mean, you can tell about a time you failed, but maybe you're not talking about how do I come to a resolution, how did I better myself because of it. So any negative question, like you can flip that into a positive, and that's what practice will do. You'll learn how to flip these things into a positive, showing showing your adaptability, showing other traits. Um, so what I was doing was I think I had a list of maybe 8 to 10 actually anecdotes that I was ready to tell, and you can spin the anecdotes to answer the question that you need to answer. So um, uh, I had a story about working in my lab and volunteering to take on a very challenging project, and like how much time was invested in that, and how I had to work with grad students when I was doing working on that project, yada yada yada. I was able to twist that into answering a lot of different questions. So that can be, tell me about a time when you kind of went above and beyond. Yeah, I could use it for that. Or there's several different ways that you can spin the story so that it can help you answer the question. And that's a lot better than just trying to come up with a new story for each question. That's kind of ridiculous. Like, you can never have that many stories. You'll be lying by the end, because that's not it's not possible to have that many you know good relevant stories. But you can apply a lot of these stories to multiple different questions. So come up with those anecdotes. Learn how to tell them really in a fun manner. Uh, what you need to be in your interview is a really good storyteller. You'll learn over time when you're telling these stories. When you're coming to maybe there's a funny part in the story, and you can just by your mannerisms express, like, to your interviewer that, oh, this is a funny part, like it's okay to laugh. And um, just little things, you'll just learn how to master your storytelling over time. And that goes along with the next point, and that's to practice in front of a mirror, or practice by recording yourself. You can just sit there by yourself. It sounds like the lamest thing in the world, but I promise it will help. You just sit in front of the mirror, and you're sitting in your chair, and you recite your answers to these questions. I remember doing that actually a couple days out from one of my interviews, and it was the first time that I was doing it. And looking in the mirror, I thought I was like, looked kind of cool, like just normal and relaxed, but some of my mannerisms just seemed really strange and off-putting. So I realized, I got to scrap that from the real deal, because it just wasn't working like I intended. So practicing in front of the mirror, it's tough. It's tough to work yourself up to actually practice in front of the mirror, or to record yourself. I never recorded myself. I hate the way I sound in recording, even though I'm doing that right now. So it's going to be a nightmare to listening back to these. But uh, do it. Just work up the courage, and sit there and watch yourself do these interviews, answer these interview questions, because it'll help you. When the time comes, you'll know kind of how you look to the other person. And then the last thing I would say is to practice interviewing with the most intimidating people in your life. If you have a really scary PI, or maybe the one of the physicians that you've worked with kind of intimidates you. You don't have to tell them, you scare me, so let's interview. You can go up to them and just say, hey, I need to practice for my med school interview. Would you mind interviewing me? Here's a list of questions. And yeah, I mean, usually they'd probably say okay, um, because you're probably going to be it's going to be an intimidating day. Those interview days are pretty tough. You're sitting there smiling all day, like going along with everything, and then I remember no matter what, before my interviews, my heart was pounding, and I was really nervous. Usually, when you get into it, it starts to flow, and you don't feel so nervous. But ahead of time, you're probably going to be pretty nervous. So practice with intimidating people. If your parents are intimidating people, sure, practice with them. But just I can't stress enough. Get as much practice as possible, and tell them to be sincere in their response. If I'm doing something or if I'm saying something that just sounds weird, doesn't come across well to you, take in what they say, take it with a grain of salt, because maybe what they say isn't exactly what an interviewer at the med school might think, because they don't know necessarily the med school interviewing process. But that all just comes back around to watching videos. Watch videos on this stuff. You'll learn how to answer these questions correctly. If there's a particular question that you don't know how to answer, look up online. What do they want to hear? For some of these hypothetical questions, where they relate a clinical case, a dilemma that they run into. You can learn what are the correct answers, and that's what they'll be looking for in the actual interview. They'll be looking, does this person know what they're talking about? Familiarize yourself with that state's laws, because a lot of these interview questions, you're going to want to start by saying, first and foremost, in this situation, I would abide by my state and hospital laws and rules. And you'll learn that. Just watch other YouTubers, and they'll give you some great advice on interviewing strategies. So yeah, I think that about wraps it up on the lead up to interview day. And I'm actually I'm gonna do one more video on like the night before, maybe a couple days out, and the day of the actual interview. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you around next time.